Louisiane en vert. Ashlee Wilson, née et élevée à Ville-Plate en Louisiane. Ashlee est artiste, poète, transcriptrice, petite fleuriste, chanteuse, herboriste et spécialiste de la vénéraire. Elle habite dans une communauté Prairie des femmes et animatrice du blog Prairie des femmes. Elle travaille à Sœur comme maîtresse d'école à l'Académie du Sacré-Cœur à Grand Coteau en Louisiane. Ashlee, bienvenue.
Merci beaucoup.
So, parlons du vénéraire d'abord. Et j'aimerais juste parler de la plante en général, mais aussi de la récente exposition parce que tu as été invité par Monique Verdun et Rachel Brunlin pour l'exposition Botanica Gardens, Landscapes and Plant Medicines in South Louisiana. J'ai pas été là, j'ai pas eu la chance d'y aller, ça fait je peux pas dire autant que toi, mais est-ce que tu peux parler juste du vénéraire et de ça, de cette expérience en général?
Oui, mais oui, j'avais la chance d'être invitée pour faire le Botanica. Et c'est ouvert là-bas au Cabildo, à côté de l'église en ville, euh, jusqu'à 2026. Ça s'appelle Botanica. Tu vas rentrer, il y a des gros canons, il y a des gros, the big guns devant le Cabildo. Et c'est juste directement au sous-sol, And mais c'était bien vite. Ils m'ont demandé quelques années passées de prendre part avec ça, mais j'avais des autres projets et c'était pas le bon temps. Mais l'ouvrage pour Botanica, ça a pris place le 20 de juin, the 20th of June. Et ils m'ont demandé comme le 5, le 2, 3, le 5 of June to like, can you get it together? And I was like, oh oui, oui, oui. So, ils m'ont dit que je pourrais avoir un petit coin, petit niche là-bas. Mais in all, I ended up having like a few different places to talk about La Prairie des Femmes in one, and then the Vineyard in one, and then the Vineyard in another one, like a little apothecary section. And I was proud to be able to bring the Vineyard to this exhibition, especially because it's called Botanica, but it focuses on plant medicines, landscapes, and gardens of Louisiana, and with like a special emphasis on like the work that some of these young gardeners and gardens are doing in New Orleans, and then like knowledge of plant medicines and things like that. So Vineyard is, well, how do I say this? It's well known in North American native ethnobotany, but less and less, and it used to be known, I'll say this, in Louisiana. A lot of the old records that I'm finding, a lot of the old formulas and lists of medicinal plants will list it. Sometimes I'll make a little error. In fact, that's funny that I say that because one of them calls it la vineraire.
Vénéraire.
Vineraire. Like
The venerator.
The error vine. Like it's like la vigne erreur.
Oh, vénéraire. Ah, wow.
Oui. Because
Okay.
somebody's like la vigne erreur. Mais c'est pas une vigne.
No.
C'est pas une erreur. But I know what they're saying. So anyway, I was happy to be able to show the vineyard and just my connection with the land here and how we've managed it in small ways that have supported these kinds of plants and animals coming back to a place, because Prairie Farm is kind of a lost country, kind of a far-flung, kind of late on the development. And so lots of things are retained here, but at the same time, we're living in a mow grass, roundup kind of. So all of the neighbors around me, one of them, they mow, oh my gosh, it must be dozens of acres they mow constantly. And they've slowly gotten rid of all the sassafras groves, all the fruiting trees that used to be back behind me. And on the other two sides of me are cow field. So the way that we've managed this land has kind of been an island. And I've noticed over the 20 years, the birds, the different diversity of birds coming back, and with the birds and the animals come these kind of plants. So long story short, the Invitée fit perfectly into the Botanica exhibition. And it was the first time that I've been able to show any of this work. And it was just such a beautiful venue. And it's going to be there for, so through 2025 until 2026. So if anybody's like, oh, I couldn't make it, it'll be there. And it was just like really organic the way that I put it together. I was joking, like it was just basically like me just like emptying one of my drawers or like clearing one of my shelves and just showing people. And it was really fulfilling to have people look at it. But like I said, like some of the people, especially like the native people that have access to native systems, indigenous tribes and things north of here, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, they know this plant. And we used to know it too, but less and less, and almost not at all. So when I found it in my field back here, I found it not knowing what it was, but I knew that there was a plant that smelled like maple syrup. And it was just so lovely. And I found many plants by smell. Like I smelled things and then found what it was. Like yellow clover was another one I did that with. And I've made things from it. So that was common for me, but the maple syrup smell was just not common. That is really, really something to just smell in your back pasture like that. So I'd go every afternoon. It was kind of like a game for me. Let me go see if I can smell this thing again. And that was in about 2011. And just over the years, got to have like more of a I kind of ID'd it, but kind of didn't know. I had kids, it kind of went away. But over the last 10 years, I've come to kind of a critical mass with the what is it called? The Vermilionville Healer's Guide. The plants listed there, there's about 80 or 90. And I've just, over the years, different ones have come into my life. Herb Cabri, goatweed, or of course, like elder. And I've just slowly over the years just worked with different plants. Oh, okay, I'm going to do elder this year. I'll go do a mass forage and I'll do all kind of stuff and I'll learn things, and done that for very many, many years. And so I got to a certain point where it's just like I knew so many plants that I was like, I'm going to go find this Invitée again. So I did that with worm seed also around the same time, and lizard's tail. But the Invitée was crazy because I knew immediately that it was like a protector. I kept it with me all the time and still do. It's either like smashed in my journals or like I'm wearing it or like it's somewhere. And it's really protected me in some crazy things. And the more I'd give it to people, the more they were like, well, where did you get this? And so the more information that came to me, the more I realized that yes, it was rare. And so there's a whole story with that. And it's rare down here and south of here, like even south of I-10 and more down the bayou because of the saltwater intrusion down there. Up here, it's more common, but I'd never seen it. And people that I talk to are kind of like, mm-mm. And it's not in any of like it's not in, like I know all of the Latin names, so I'm checking, I'm cross-referencing, like, okay, it's not the Pseudonephalium obtusifolium, which is the most modern Latin name. It's the Nephalium, so I've checked all of our books, like the Prairie book, the Cajun Prairie. It's just not in these books. It's not in a lot of it's not in a lot of things. I'm finding it in some of the old, like lists of plants, old medicinals that you don't see very often anymore, or like, I don't know, mentioned. I'm finding a lot of errors with it, like like Invitée. I'm finding a lot of like people not exactly knowing what it is. But anyway, long story short, it it could have been three different things. It could have been purple everlasting, which is very, very common around here. It could have been pearly everlasting or fragrant prairie everlasting. What we have is fragrant prairie everlasting. And it took a lot of work to figure out exactly what it was, because there are so many, like there are a lot of our resources that I was using that are in error. They didn't exactly know what they had. And so I was trying to cross-reference with them and coming up to questions. So it was really a very fun thing for me, especially because the way that I felt that it was rare for around here. I mean, I know goldenrod, I know the Monglier, I know the wax myrtle and the ragweeds and I mean, but this one is like, it almost looks like a lavender plant, and it has a real white underside. Like I said, it's very common and used medicinally up north of here in northern states. In the north where you are, pearly everlasting is the one. It's common. It's a little bigger and it's a little bit more yellow in the middle. And I hear it doesn't smell as much, but I do think it smells. But anyway, I guess I'm still not finding patches of it anywhere else around here. And I know that the research I'm doing is helpful to our culture, to Louisiana culture, and I'm helping to spread the seed. I've given the seed back to a bunch of the native tribes this year. It really helped me, to gave me a goal. And so I'm going to continue doing that. And I'm making like little balms and things that I naturally do with it. And I'm burning it, almost daily, and researching it more and more. But anyway, and right now, I guess in the field, I've counted over 100. They're all just volunteer. And I'll continue as the fall comes to find them, because they get a little easier to find in the fall because they turn real white. But I'm expecting to have about 200 or 300 plants. It's wonderful. And they're nowhere else. They're just in my back field. I mean, it's not in any, I went on all the fields around me. I'd like to know where else it's coming from, honestly. That's kind of the goal right now. I'd like to, because they kind of gave me a hard time. Some of the scientists, they were like, no, well, you have purple cudweed, which is the other one. And I do, we all have purple cudweed. It's very, very common, like a plantain, almost in the yard. Um, so I knew I had that, but I was just like, okay. But when you see this plant in the field, you're like, oh, it's very lovely. It smells already. Um, it really gave me like, I don't know, it gave me a lot of hope to find this plant and for it to take me on this whole little healing journey with it. So it's good for lung healing, skin healing, and it's spiritual protective purposes. On the blog, I've written the whole story on the blog, and I've listed all of the native uses that I can find online. And then I'm getting into the source material for those. There's a book called Choctaw, The Ceremonial Life of the Choctaw Indians, that I'm using, and it talks about the Choctaw name for this plant, which I also started researching as I was preparing for Botanica. And so I was able to put it in the exhibit. And so I don't want to pronounce it because I'm not an expert in Choctaw. But I also found out that this one word refers to 3 other plants that I had access to and that I work with. So that kind of was interesting to me. It also talks about greenbrier, elder, the rabbit tobacco, and sumac. 4 plants. So greenbrier, sumac, rabbit tobacco, and elder. They're all called this one word that I can. Yeah, it's very interesting. So like it just continues, and I found some other names for this plant that refers to it as spirit medicine, which I completely can attest to that.
Yeah, you can observe that.
Yeah, I've outlived it in like some of the realest ways. Like I can't even really get into the ways this plant was really there for me in some beautiful ways, and my instincts led me to it, told me what she was good for, and it all was confirmed.
Yeah, I love that. And I like the just the newness of it. And I feel like there's a poem I read lately. I can't remember, but there's like one line of it that I remember. All the new things I love are old. And it's like a new thing that you discovered in the community that you're documenting and that you're living and a part of, but also a kind of external observer, right? You're not from there. So it's like you have this simultaneous in and out. And then in Pretty Day Femme, you found this new thing for you, which is quite old. And it's also kind of a new thing, I think, for so many people because of how rare it is, right?
Right. And I think the whole this little Veneter story is kind of a encapsulation of what my role is as a woman who understands the modern and the old in a way, and how I'm able to bring my knowledge of, I don't know, using an app and using different things to ID this plant, and like my teacher knowledge, knowing that I have to have certain credentials, and going through everything that I knew, that I was confident in myself, but also being able to apply the spiritual knowledge that I absorbed through through Cajun French. And um, so I find that it's almost like bringing an old word back or something, or like these musicians love to find these old obscure songs and bring them back. I love that. And so we're lucky that we're able to access the old information and even dare, to say, hey, like this is a rare plant that we don't use in our culture anymore because we've lost contact with so many things like this, and to be one of the ones, there's many of us that can recognize that, observe it, and elevate it in a way and share it. What I've been doing is just sharing it.
Right.
And I feel like, well, that works out. And I don't know if it's just that I put my, maybe I had a magic experience with this plant, and maybe I ascribed a lot of meaning to it. No matter what, this plant knew. I often say it's kind of like a shawi because it'll follow you. It will, like, I do believe plants are smart. Of course they are. They, this plant knew that I was gonna make sure it didn't get cut, didn't get poisoned. Everyone that I found, I put a little pink flag, and woo, so excited.
And it was there, right? It was there when you were, hanging out with the swamp rose and whenever you were doing all these things with other plants, like protecting them, asking questions of them, and, engaging with them. It was there, right? Whether you knew it or not. So it's like it kind of had that advantage over you to say, like, this person, the guy got something going on, that I need to get involved in, or is going to look out for me maybe, or
That's very interesting that you say that, because yes, it could be. Um, Also, that where I first found it is in the very back of our property, in a place So what the biologists end up telling me, I visited with all of the ethnobotanists, the folklorists, all the big ones. I've visited all the prairie biologists. I've had them all over here to check this plant out. And what the big one told me is that you're only going to find this plant basically in a place that's like a prairie remnant,
Okay.
where the rhizomal layer or the biodiversity has not been disturbed. But that's not true for our field. Our field has been plowed and poisoned and fertilized and all these things. But I do think possibly that back corner
Was skipped, maybe.
could have been what does he call that when the plow,
Oh, the shant, like a turn row, like a
yeah, there's a name for that. And like even in the corner of the field I'm talking about. So that's where I first found it. It doesn't come back in the same place. It's biennial. So I'll have like when I'm harvesting in the fall, I'll have some that are this big and some that are this big, And even right now I have some that are, and then some that are, real big.
yeah.
And so I don't know, there's something about the way we manage the land. I do think it likes to be burned. I think it likes when the prairie's burned. I think it came up more when we burned. So this year I'm going to do that again. And I've talked to some like hunters and things around here, and they say it'll come up in like clear cuts, like Thistlewade or some different places. So I'm on the hunt for some other places close to here where this plant grows.
Right.
Because it's almost like everybody's just like, I mean, Monglier is the big thing
Yeah.
right now. But I mean, I guess I started working with Monglier when my students brought it to me
Okay.
in like 07, 08. So I didn't have this experience with Monglier, but I definitely respected it, processed it, observed it in every season. And like, yeah, the Swamp Rose was one I did. The Pseudo was one. The Wax Myrtle, the CDA, that was a huge one that I did a lot of work with her. Like I made wax I still collect the little berries every year. And then just like all the little fruit trees, I mean, oh my goodness, there's so much over here. Um, I love like I have my little spots in all my little seasons where I know to go
Right.
to get things. And so I guess I had like a herb cabri moment up in the Chico woods. I started like setting out to look for herb cabri. That was probably in 14, 15, 13, 14, 15, and found it in the Chico woods where my family has a camp. Mamu was, of course, one of these. The early plants was the Mamu plant that was introduced to me by Richard Guidry. And I remember starting to write about it on the blog and got in touch with Bill Fontenot, who's a family friend and also like a well-known, um, I'd call him an ethnobotanist, but he's like a horticulturalist, they call him. But he scolded me. He was like, watch out, some of the elders are like, watch out with what you talk about because it's red and it's poison. So I tell people the same thing now, but I know what they were telling me, they were being protective and I didn't like it. But
Right. No, but now you
but
understand, I guess, after
oh
going
yeah,
through that.
now it's me. People ask me about Mamu. I'm like, I can tell you, but I don't want to just tell all these people, even though you have to be a fool to misuse some plant medicine, but people these days.
Well, the trendiness of things can be dangerous, I think.
Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of there's still a lot of mistrust of natural things in the ethos of our culture. Like our grandparents were like the ones that were like, no, you go to the hospital. Like the hospital's clean and white. And so I find there's still a stigma big time.
Okay. Around the more herbal route.
Sure, sure. You have people, if people are asking you for it, they believe and it works better for them, of course. But when people find out that I'm like into that, they're like, and so do you like use like, is that all you use, plant medicine? I'm just like, no.
Right.
Like, I'm like, no, I will pop a Tylenol if I need it. Like anybody else. Yeah. Now I might, if I have my Malo root in the water, I might just drink that if it's available right there. That's what I like. And I'll use that before I'll pop a Tylenol. But if I don't have my root, I'll pop a Tylenol. God gave the intellect to know, okay, you're having a skin problem. Let's try this herb, but also some AHA, BHA, exfoliating stuff from the ordinary works great too. I'm not gonna be all, I'm not, I speak English and French. I'm level-headed to a point, but I do believe that I've been given the intellect and like the specialized, everybody has their specialized interests. I've been given that, and this is what I've applied it to, and this is what it's like geographically where I've been born. Like it really it is what it is.
And I think there's something so like overlooked and important about just like recognizing your lane um and really trying to thrive in that lane, and it's not a bad thing, right? It's a good thing to cultivate that. And for me, it was always like language stuff and writing and playing and talking and uh the language stuff. So,
Stories.
the stories, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, they called me Piroque from, 2 years old because it was a lot of telling stories and repeating stuff that I should or shouldn't be repeating. And
Ah, that's funny.
uh, so that's the lane, right? For me, that works. That always
Yeah.
has. It's like you try to turn away from it maybe, and then you just get brought back.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I think for you, there's something so like inevitable about the plant interaction. It's just like,
But it just shows whatever you put your attention to. Now, I could have overlooked this plant 1,000 more times,
yeah,
but it came to me at a time where I went and looked for it. I went and looked for a few other plants in the same way, in the same couple weeks, because I looked at that whole list on the Vermilionville Healer's Guide, and I was like, well, which ones have I not found? Like, of course, like Jimson weed, like, no, I don't have that. And like, there's a few that are in North Louisiana that I just don't have access to down here. But then there's a few that I was like, well, let me go find worm seed, for example. And I would look it up and kind of get an idea of what I was looking for and um set an intention, go out, boom, just find it. And like in weird places, like I found the worm seed in a soybean field. It was just sticking up over the soybean, like at least Roundup resistant. Oh my gosh, where I collect it right now, it grows all along the straightaway on Jules Lagrange right over there, and this one straightaway, just worm seed on both sides of the road. And I'm always just like right now is the time to, I've already harvested some, but then one of my boys knocked it down. So I'm kind of like, should I just go get some more? But then I'm like, they spray the side of the road. But then I'm getting it. It's a wormer. I'm using the seeds from it. I don't know.
right. I mean, I guess using the seeds from it would be fine, right? Like
I don't know. There's all kind of, I'm just saying there's all kind of things
to consider there, yeah.
to consider. So I found the plant, but I don't know if it's a good stash or whatever, a good source. But I've tried to kind of spread them here and we'll see. Everything that I forage, I bring back here and just kind of broadcast. I don't
I see. But you're curious enough, and I mean, you know how to do research. So it's
I
like,
love to gather stuff and then, find a little place in the yard and dig a little hole in my foot and say, okay, good luck.
yeah, see what happens. I mean, that's the beauty of weeds, right? Like what we call weeds. I mean, it's like
Right.
they're super
That's what I deal in.
they're strong, yeah,
Yeah, they don't need me too much.
tenacious, right? They have the
Right.
sort of kind of hard-headed, which is good in
Right.
your case. Yeah. So with the plants, so like with Invitée and just like these excursions that you do observing plants and interacting with plants. I'm wondering like what does that look like with the journaling part? Like, are you bringing journals out there with you and
Every
you're writing
time,
in them? Okay, so
every
can you
time.
just paint that picture for me? Like, what's the role of writing down in the journal when you're in that world?
Okay, well, usually the role of the journal is collecting. It's like I'm trying to find I have one right here that I use often, but the journal usually is used in a way that is, how do you call it, utilitarian? Where I'll actually like, oh, here it is, look.
Oh yeah, it almost looks like a purse.
But it's the size of, it's the size of one of those travel journals. So I'll take the journal out, it'll hold things for me. Um, like most of my journals from that time also have pine resin or copal resin. I was like picking resins off the trees, using them as incense, or like really I started using them as fire starter. And I would just keep, well, I would just the thing with me is I collect and then I figure out why I collected.
I see. So you're not really collecting with an intention. It's more like you collect with the curiosity. Yeah,
Yeah, like, oh, here's this cool hickory nut on the side of the lake. Let me just like fill my pockets with it and then get home later and like, oh, we can find like, oh, let me look up hickory nuts or whatever. I'm talking like that's an example. Just like just as a kid, I thought things like this were cool on the side of the lake, or like sweet gum balls, the copal balls. We always collected those green or dry, and turns out there's all kinds of uses for them. So yeah, so I'll bring these journals out in the field and I'll use them to collect specimens and like resins. So you open up some of my old journals and like it's almost like my artist's mark. Like when I was sad and I wanted to go make a little fire in the woods, but I didn't have, everything was damp. And then I thought, oh, well, I have all that resin in my book. So I would just tear a piece of that page out and make a little fire starter. And then I was like, so the journals, so I'll hold the stuff in the journals and then I'll do a lot of my initial research on the plant in the journals and like note taking.
okay.
And then I mean, of course, sometimes I'm out there like I'll write a little bit, but I don't find that I'm out there like live journaling with the plant. But maybe I do. But I find when I'm out there, I usually don't have the peace of mind sometimes to actually sit and journal with the plant. It's more like gather and journal later.
I see. More reflective later on at like coupled with the research and notes and stuff.
Yeah, I would say my journals are full. I'm trying to find one. They're full of plant matter.
Yeah, and then it's interesting too, like just the order of events. It's like going out, being open to kind of like picking something, and then, if it speaks to you in one way or another, then it's not harvesting. It's like it's just kind of like an exchange, right? Like you're giving attention and then you have little bits of sap or twigs or,
Yeah. I
leaves.
do both. Sometimes I think I'm always focused on trying to harvest. Because like when I find some, I'm like, ooh, like if I'm out in nature and I see like a big old copal tree, I'm gonna be all over it. And then the only thing I have to keep it is in my journal. But I might go out and say, I'm going to go find this plant. And I might go try to find some specimens, or I might be out there and say, oh, that one, that looks unfamiliar. I wonder what that is. And take a few specimens to go and ID later. Or I might be like, oh, I remember they were talking about that plant.
parlons de ce qu'on fait avec des plantes. Je vais te demander de lire un poème pour nous autres, si ça va. Donc, tu as écrit un poème Cajun Spell qu'on peut trouver dans le blog Crédit des femmes. Euh, Avant de lire le poème, is there anything you want to say about the poem before you read it?
Well, yeah, I guess this is the first time I'm ever talking about it. And you know, it's very rare that I let my stuff that I wrote it probably within the last 5 to 10 years. And it is based off of what many of my things are based off of. Because like as a writer, I'm so haunted. I'm so, oh, we talked about this, how you so antsy your work. But a lot of my work that I'm most proud of is the stuff that has come from inspiration of hearing Charlie Manuel and Jim Swallow and Mark Lane talk on the Tosta Cafe radio program, especially Charlie and Jim. They hearing them speak as a child when I was like would hear them on the radio as a child, not understanding them, but like hearing their jovialness and stuff. And then the experience of going back and listening to them as adults, same voices, same commercials, same jovialness, was overwhelming. So wonderful for me. Just like, oh, just like the work of my life. To this day, if I'm having a bad day, I'll go and put on like I'll make a little coffee and I'll put on a little Tosta Cafe, my recordings, and oh, it's like heaven. It's like being a kid again, but I can understand them. So the Cajun spell is a lot of the things that I've written down that they'd say. And a lot of my writing I find is these kind of repetitive, a lot of the things I'm most proud of anyway, are some of these little repetitive things that I'd hear them say and I'd be like, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I don't know if it's because I'm understanding and it's like registering, or if it's just, I don't know, like the way that Mr. Charlie would be like, he'd be advertising something and say, oh, mais on peut aller on et on dessus ça. We
Hmm.
can go on that.
Yeah, on
And
et on dessus ça.
on peut aller on et on dessus ça.
Amazing.
Some stuff like that. It's just so and so silly. And that made it into Toiron. On peut aller oui on et on ron. So I think that Cajun Spell is one of these things that I kind of wrote kind of like that with a lot of their little, I don't know if you'd call it a little chic, but like these little things that they would say.
Alors, écoutez ça. Ça, c'est Ashlee Wilson qui lit son poème Cajun Spell.
Cœur de cèdre, feuille de pin, le cri d'Amédée Ardouin, eye of round, sans dosaille, bayou noir, la joncaille. Candor Hotel, burn it down, make 3 rips around my town. Les idées dans ma cervelle, mêlent dans un choquel, et ça c'est un Cajun spell.
Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, but cool. That was nice to read it for the first time. That was the first time I've ever. That, I mean, I could break it down for you, but it's just really just kind of clips of sound that I've just kind of started putting together. And I think the heart of this was the Eye of Round Sondosai. Because because I was doing a lot of advertising on the radio and they would always advertise the meat, Sondosai, Eye of Round,
Yeah.
Candor Hotel.
Yeah. Yeah, they're advertising all their grillade and everything. Like, the meat market always has a commercial on that show. And and yeah, so you get these sound clips, and I mean that's the way memory works, right? And so it's like the poem is putting it all in this space where we can just get these little bursts of things that we would hear. I mean, if you listen to a 2 hour episode of La Tasse de Café, tu vas pas te rappeler tout ça qui est dit. You know, there's going to be some things that obviously slip through the cracks, but what you do remember says something about yourself or about the moment in the show.
And that's what I have in my journals. That's all that I have. So that poem is an example of the kind of things that pop out to me that I've written down, and then I've made them make sense in my own cadence.
Well, I was just to kind of like break down the poem, you know, it's center aligned, which is nice because I don't see many poems that are center aligned, and it's like Cajun spell, the Cajun spell, the title is like the same length as a lot of the lines. It's all very kind of short. And then I think about like the word Cajun and all that comes with that, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and that there's so much to talk about there. But then like spell, so then you're waiting for okay, because a poem is a spell, and a poem has the same kind of powers that any spell has, in that there's something being transmitted from one person to another in the air almost. Like you read that poem, people hear it, and they're in the same space as you, in not in a physical space, but in something in like kind of multi-dimensional. And so like spell is interacting with the spiritual world and with the environment, and it's a medium between the poet and the listener or reader. So all that is like already in the title. And
Right, right, right.
and then I just think about words too on the spell level. How do you spell Cajun? And so like the verb to spell in
Right.
is really just us taking the alphabet and arranging it in certain ways to deliver a message. Like, so those are kind of the fundamental things.
I'm working within this space that Cajun is a very ubiquitous, like the cliche term for what I'm talking about, but the things that I'm listing are not exactly, they're not like, if you like searched Cajun on Google, you might not find some of these things. But to me, these are like the images and the sounds and the smells and the actions of what it means to me to invoke who we are, who I am, what it means.
And it's so funny too how that word is so well known, but so poorly known at the same time. Because it's like people hear the word, they know the word. I mean, I was in Ireland 2 weeks ago, and I ate in the airport a chicken sandwich, like one of the little plastic ones that you get from like, you know, the gas station out the fridge. Like I had a Cajun chicken sandwich from that in Dublin,
Lovely.
and
Oh, wow.
and I liked it. And so like
Of course. I always love those.
like I like those little gas station sandwiches, and you know, I had it with chips and a lemonade, and I'm like, I'm Cajun, you know, like je suis un Cormier, ma famille vient de Nouveau-Brunswick. It's like all like you put Cajun, or you know, try to define Cajun anyway, and like I'm in that somewhere. And so I'm like, yeah, that's a Cajun chicken sandwich. Parce que moi je l'ai dit, you know. And nous autres on a le pouvoir pour appeler quelque chose Cajun or no. And so that's what I love about the the Rotel line, because it's, you know, you got two languages in there, and it's 3 words, and it's like that's the secret, you know. That says it all. It's like, why is that makshu so good? Let me tell you, you know.
Yeah, the hotel, burn it down.
Yeah, burn it down. And it's so funny, just all these codes. Like I was talking to my mom the other day, because I was writing a story, and there's a character in the story who cooks a gumbo, and so the ingredients are getting listed, and they going through it. And so I read that to her just to like see how it hit her ear, share with my mom something I wrote. And she was like, Well, they didn't put any parsley or green onions at the end. And it's just like, so some of us are just so always on this stuff, right? And it's like so coded, it's so nuanced, but what you know it when it's not,
Or when it's trying too hard.
or when it's trying too hard, when it's too much, or whatever. It's
Yeah, and we all know that like one of the amazing things about like the internet and like these last 20 years and Cajun memes and everything, it makes everybody very super aware of these kind of shared symbols and images, but some of them have just gotten so done. So I don't know. I always find, I mean, as a writer, of course, you never want to be cliche, and I'm just trying to find the most honest way. I mean, that was very hard for me to share that poem. Very hard. But it makes me feel good that like, okay, well, if you get it. So yeah, that one was really, I think it was inspired by the Toss Cafe guys, the things that they would say, and me trying to just like, you put all those things together, you're not going to get much. You might be cooking a sauce.
so yeah, that poem, Cajun Spell, I'm a big fan of that poem. And I really I like the movement of it. I like that Amédée Ardouin is there because this is somebody who's like highly recognized within the what I call the upside down world, so le monde français en Louisiane. Um, but really not very well known outside of that, It's like a figure you got to be in it.
Yeah, he's like, well, well, if you know his music, it's like that. So that is the cri, sans cri. And like, yeah, if we're not going to hear the resonance of what he did for us and how he was like the cruel way he was lost, all that, like if we're not going to add that into the sauce, then like we're not remembering nothing. We ain't cooking nothing. He's singular. Yeah, he's singular in that, I find, in the mix. And so many people don't know or don't give him the credit. In the last few years, I mean, of course, there's been like his family and the people in Opelousas and with the statue and Daryl Bork, and they've done the Cravens, they've done amazing, the Ardwins, they've done amazing things and they still are. But it just deserves. If you're going to talk about Cajun,
Especially Cajun music. Yeah.
yeah, he deserves to be talked about. Ça, c'est ça que je crois.
C'est ça. C'est ça. Merci beaucoup d'avoir partagé le poème.
Oh, c'est ma plaisir. It makes me want to share more that I've written kind of like that in that vein. Because I've been seeing the project that I'm working on that like I've just been fighting with for like, I'll tell you this about Prairie Farm. Prairie Farm is a mother. And she probably represents like all the mothers like we never had. All the aspects like the Cajun grandmother that I never like. I had a Cajun grandma, but she wasn't a Boudreaux. Wasn't my mama. She was my gram. Her dad was in the oil field. She was blonde. You know what I mean? I don't know. I went off on that. Uh, but I think the Prairie Farm Project is like, for me, it was just so fertile. And from it was like an overarching, just like umbrella kingdom almost. And out of it, a lot of little things were born. It was just like, this is the overarching idea, and this is the style, and this is the aesthetic. And but what parts of you make that as like what has because I'm not from Prairie Farm exactly. I mean, I'm from Ville Platte. I'm from a little different. I mean, takes it takes a specific eye to see the differences, I guess, from 30 miles up the road, but I definitely see them. And so a lot of the other projects I feel were like little gremlins off of Prairie Farm. Like the more I watered her, the more the like the little gremlins multiplied. And and I hope that Prairie Farm as a project is like helped other, and Meadow Malheureuse, for example, as a project helps other Cajun women, Creole women writers, Louisiana, marginalized people of any type, um, to find like their voice in the similar way that I found mine through this aesthetic and through this place, through belonging here and having quiet and like and wanting to honor like the history of the place and having the faculty about me to be able to use the French in there and make myself feel like a little bit more grounded in this place because of the French, because there's a lot of information that you have access to when you speak French around here that you don't have access to in English. Like from place names and what they mean and how they interact with the land and the history of the land, to the same like with plants. There'll be use information within the name of the plant, or like where you can find it or who likes to eat it. Like for the rabbit tobacco, for example, there's information in our French that just never gets translated into English.
Merci beaucoup, Ashley, d'être venue avec nous autres. Ça, c'est la deuxième fois que tu es sur un podcast avec moi. La dernière fois, c'était avec moi et Joseph. Je suis réveillé. Aujourd'hui, merci beaucoup d'être venu dans le balado, dans le podcast Louisiane en vers. C'était un grand plaisir pour moi de t'avoir ici.
Oh, pareillement. I think it was much more helpful for moi, just pour parler de l'écriture et pour partager avec un autre écrivain de la Louisiane. Et tu fais beaucoup de bon travail et j'espère que ça continue. Et c'était mon honneur, c'était un honneur d'être ici. So, merci beaucoup.